Hey guys, tonight we descend into one of the least glamorous, most underappreciated, and oddly fascinating aspects of medieval life, the toilet, or, more accurately, the many filthy, smelly, makeshift ways that humans through history have tried to part ways with their bodily waste. If you're tucked into bed right now, soft pillows, clean sheets, maybe a candle burning somewhere safe, prepare yourself, because you're about to time travel back to a world without plumbing, privacy, or personal boundaries. There are no bathrooms here, no porcelain, no flushing, no two-ply toilet paper. There's barely a wall to lean on. Tonight, you're entering a chapter of history where the closest thing to luxury was a wooden hole suspended above a river, and the worst-case scenario involved public defecation, angry geese, and an open sewer flowing past your window. You probably won't survive this. And even if you do, you'll never sit on a toilet the same way again. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is. I like to know which time zones are tuning in while I describe the many creative ways medieval folks managed their bowels. Now dim the lights. Let the fan hum like a breeze over a muddy moat. And let's begin. You wake up in the middle of the night with a familiar feeling in your gut, that unmistakable medieval rumble. Something you ate, yesterday's turnip mash, last week's eel stew, or maybe just raw terror, is ready to leave your body. There's no holding it in. You're going to have to go. Now. You sit up in the pitch-black dark. There's no candle, too expensive to burn just for poop. You feel around, quietly, so as not to wake the 6 other people sleeping in the same room. Your fingers brush against something smooth and cold. It's the chamber pot, an iron or ceramic bowl that everyone in your household shares. It's been used, dumped, reused, and used again. It smells like something died inside it, then came back to life just to die a second time. And tonight, it's your only option. You squat over it. Your knees crack. Your back protests. You try to aim. You miss. You try again. Success? Maybe. You don't check. Once you're done, you shuffle the pot to the corner. Someone else will deal with it in the morning. Probably you. The pot will be dumped into a larger bucket, and eventually that bucket gets emptied into the open sewer trench behind the house. That's right. Open sewer trench. It runs behind the row of homes like a river of eternal shame. Sometimes it even overflows. Children fall in. Drunk men fall in. You once saw a goose fall in and come out different. No one talks about what it saw. If you live in a town or city, your waste might get chucked into the street. That's not an exaggeration. People would literally toss their chamber pot contents out the window with a polite warning, "Gardyloo," which loosely translates to "Look out below," then splash. Hope you weren't walking under that window. Street gutters were essentially open toilets. The entire road system was built with the understanding that human waste needed somewhere to flow, and it flowed, right past your door, right through your sandals, right into your soul. Now, if you're a bit wealthier or just lucky, you might have access to a privy. A privy is a small wooden shack, sometimes attached to your house, sometimes hanging over a river. It's got a bench with a hole in it and a pit below. That's it. No door lock, no ventilation, no dignity. You walk into the privy holding your tunic like a warrior approaching battle. It smells like a combination of fermented cabbage, dead rats, and hot mud. You sit down and immediately regret everything you've ever done to lead to this point in your life. Sometimes people toss straw, ashes, or herbs into the hole to help with the smell. It doesn't help. It just makes the stink feel more festive. Now imagine you're at a castle. Must be better, right? Wrong. Castle toilets are called garderobes, and they are literally stone chutes built into the outer wall. You sit in a little nook high above the courtyard or moat, do your business, and it drops straight down, onto the ground, or into the water, or onto a peasant who is having a really bad day. Cold air rushes up the chute and freezes your butt. Rats sometimes crawl up, Birds nest in the holes. One unlucky knight was famously killed when an enemy soldier climbed into the castle through the garderobe. Let that sink in. A man scaled a castle through poop. And toilet paper? Please. You have options. Rough cloth scraps, moss, straw, smooth river stones if you're lucky. In some places, people used their hands and rinsed them in a communal basin. Monks sometimes used a gomph stick, which was basically a wooden spatula dedicated to scraping poop off your butt. Sometimes it was shared. You have a moment of stillness. The chamber pot sits there, judging you. Your backside burns. You wipe with the dried corn husk. It makes everything worse. But the job is done. You crawl back to bed. You pray for morning. You pray for clean water. You pray for the invention of modern plumbing. Because in this world, going to the bathroom is an act of bravery.
It's morning now. The chamber pot is full, and the room smells like every bad decision made in the last 12 hours. Someone farted in their sleep, probably your uncle, and the dog is sniffing around the pot like it's a fine stew. You push aside the itchy wool blanket and rise from the straw mattress, your body stiff, your nose offended. First task of the day? Chamber pot duty. You lift the pot carefully. It sloshes. You gag. You whisper a small prayer to the saints of sanitation and tiptoe through the creaking floorboards, avoiding your cousin's foot and the family chicken who somehow always ends up sleeping indoors. Outside, the morning air greets you with the sharp contrast of dew and dung. You make your way to the communal waste trench, which runs behind the houses like a moat of medieval misery. You dump the pot's contents into the ditch. The splash is foul. A fly immediately lands on your cheek. You slap it away, smear something you wish you hadn't, and sigh. You rinse the pot with a ladle of stale rainwater from a barrel that's mostly algae now. Soap? Don't make yourself laugh. Soap is a dream whispered by nobles and nuns. Some villages assign waste removal to a designated person, the gong farmer. It's exactly as glamorous as it sounds. Gong farmers shovel human waste out of privy pits, load it into carts, and haul it outside the city walls. Their pay is surprisingly decent, but so is the risk of falling into a cesspit and becoming one with the job. It's happened. People drowned in medieval poop. It's not a metaphor. In cities, night soil collectors roam after dark. They knock on doors, gather chamber pots, and pour their contents into large vats or ditches. You can hear them sloshing down the alley before you see them, their boots soaked, their souls dead inside. One slip on the cobblestones, and your entire week is ruined. If you're in London or Paris, you might see public latrines, a marvel of civic planning, wooden benches overhanging rivers or moats, a whole row of people sitting cheek to cheek, trousers down, discussing the weather or the latest sermon. No stalls, no privacy, just communal poop time. Some even had gender-separated sections, though the smell didn't discriminate. You might find a monk on your left and a fishmonger on your right, both grunting in unison like it's a Gregorian bowel chant. But the river is not a magical self-cleaning stream. It's overloaded with human waste, dead animals, and every filthy runoff from every building nearby, and people still bathe in it. They draw drinking water from it. Children play near it. It's a miracle anyone lived past 12. Now let's get really fun. Flying toilets. Yes, that's what historians now call the habit of throwing human waste out the window.
Upper floor residents would dump the contents of their chamber pots straight onto the street. The wealthier homes had little signs that warned pedestrians. Others just yelled, "Guardy Lou!" and hoped for the best. You learned very quickly to walk close to the walls during the day. The toilet zone was the middle of the road. You also learned to never look up if you heard a window creak. Those who didn't learn? They were the reason people started carrying cloaks over their heads like poop umbrellas. In marketplaces, the smell was a feature, not a flaw. The streets were sticky, muddy, and always suspiciously wet. Shoes were never clean. Neither were the vendors. You'd be buying a pie with one hand and swatting flies off your face with the other, while trying not to step into a puddle that bubbled ominously. You hoped it was rain. It wasn't. Privies often emptied directly into moats or rivers. That means castles, those bastions of civilization and military glory, were surrounded by literal toilets. When enemies laid siege, they camped downwind of years of royal bowel movements. There's a theory that the smell alone could drive off attackers. Forget arrows. Just wait until the wind changed. Now, how about toilets on the road? Travelers often relieve themselves in forests, fields, or behind rocks. You dug a shallow hole, did your business, and covered it. Sometimes. If you were lucky, you didn't sit on a nettle or squat near a snake. If you were unlucky, you were bitten. Somewhere important. Monks traveling between monasteries often carried small wooden scoops for burying their waste. That's probably the cleanest thing anyone did in 500 years. And yes, they wiped. With what? Moss, leaves, rags, hay. Smooth stones were a fan favorite in some areas. In monasteries, scholars wrote about the three-stick method, which is exactly what it sounds like. 3 small sticks used to clean yourself. They were washed and reused. Eventually. You once tried it. You still have emotional trauma.
Now let's touch on toiletry etiquette, because yes, there were rules. In wealthier homes, guests were offered cloths and basins to clean themselves before and after using the privy. You didn't just waltz in and leave your sins behind. You cleaned up, sort of. Nobles might have a servant carry away the waste, and in some rare cases, they had perfumed cloths or dried petals to mask the horror. Kings had groom of the stool, a position of extreme trust and power. Their job? To assist the king in using the toilet. Not joking. They managed everything from wiping to disposal to managing the royal bowel schedule. Some even became powerful advisors because nothing says loyalty like holding the chamber pot for the King of England. You, of course, have no such luxury. You finish your morning routine, scrape your boot clean on a patch of grass, and head toward the center of the village. The sewer trench bubbles ominously beside you. A dog laps water from it. You look away. A baby laughs. Somewhere, someone shouts about a clogged privy. And you? You just try not to breathe through your nose. It's noon now and the sun is high. Warmth radiates from the rooftops, which might sound comforting until you realize what else is heating up. The streets, the walls, the waste. The entire village has become a slow-cooking latrine casserole. Every surface is simmering in a stew of humanity. You step gingerly through the market square. Cobblestones slick with mysterious slime. Children running barefoot, laughing, screaming, splashing puddles that absolutely did not come from the sky. You feel something soft and warm squish under your boot. You don't look down. You never look down. In the center of town sits a modest wooden structure with a crooked sign and a smell so potent it defies theology. This is the public privy, and today you've decided to brave it. Inside, it's exactly what you feared. A long bench with holes cut into it, side by side, no dividers. Just strangers pooping together, like a choir but smellier. You nod respectfully to the elderly man 2 holes down. He nods back. You both pretend this is normal. There's no flushing, no plumbing. Waste drops directly into a pit below where it waits, weeks, months, sometimes years, until a brave soul empties it or nature reclaims it. The wood creaks ominously beneath you. You wonder how many have fallen through. The air inside is thick, a medieval soup of methane, mildew, and memories. You breathe shallowly through your mouth and try not to gag as you do your business. There's graffiti carved into the wall, little drawings of butts, saints, and suspiciously detailed demons. Someone scratched "help" above your head. You relate. Beside the bench is a small bucket. Inside, wiping tools. Today, it's moss.
Sometimes it's cloth. Sometimes it's a communal sponge on a stick dipped in vinegar between uses. You've heard of Roman latrines using that trick, but you suspect this sponge hasn't seen vinegar in a decade. You opt for moss and pray it wasn't freshly harvested from the haunted side of the woods. Outside the privy, a boy stands with a bucket of sweet water, a euphemism for a slightly less filthy rinse. You splash your hands. The water turns gray. You wipe them on your tunic. Hygiene is a spectrum, and you're sliding toward the low end. You step back into the sun. Your nose has adapted. You don't smell the stench anymore. That's not a good sign. That's survival. You walk through an alley, nose still tingling. On the wall, there's a stone chute, a primitive waste disposal system. Residents on upper floors relieve themselves into clay pots and pour them into these vertical pipes which empty into the street or directly into the nearest body of water. Gravity is the real sewer system. A splash lands near your boot. You flinch. A woman on the second floor waves apologetically. You nod. You're used to it.
You pass a bakery. The smell of bread almost overpowers the odor of dung. Almost. You consider buying a loaf, but then you notice the baker casually relieving himself in a bucket behind the shop. He doesn't break eye contact. You move on. Now you're passing the tanner's district, where leather is made by soaking animal hides in urine and lime. The stench here is violent. Piles of hides lie in vats, bubbling, releasing a fog so potent it could wilt iron. The workers' hands are stained yellow. Their boots squish. This is what industry smells like. Further down, you see a woman pouring hot ashes into a privy pit. It's one of the few sanitation methods that actually works. Ashes neutralize the worst of the rot. For a few hours. Then the pit remembers who it is. You watch a rat leap out and scurry into the shadows. It looks healthier than you. In larger cities, sanitation laws exist on parchment, but not in practice. Fines for throwing waste in the streets, edicts against fouling the alleys, but enforcement lacks, unless a noble steps in something. And even then, only if their shoe is expensive. You spot a man crouched near a wall, defecating in public like it's a performance. He even whistles. You keep walking. There's nothing to do. No guards, no scolding, just one more deposit in the medieval ecosystem. And what about the church? Surely holy places are cleaner? Nope. Monasteries had their own latrines, often connected to small running water systems that washed waste away. A genius design. Until you realize the water was reused for drinking downstream. Monks bathed once a month, if they were lucky. Pilgrims used every bush on the holy grounds. Even sacred soil has a breaking point. You hear bells ringing. Time for midday prayers. The faithful gather in the square, kneeling beside sewer trenches, bowing with reverence, while flies circle their heads like halos. Faith doesn't cancel odor, but it helps you pretend. By now, your stomach is growling. You haven't eaten since dawn. You buy a meat pie. It's lukewarm. The crust is flaky. The meat is ambiguous. You take a bite. The flavor hits you. So does the realization this vendor is standing directly above the waste channel that runs behind the tavern. His shoes are in it. So are yours. You stop chewing. You finish anyway. You need the calories. And so the day trudges on. Waste piles higher. Trenches overflow. Buckets clank. The village functions like a digestive tract. Everything comes in, everything goes out, and no one wants to talk about the middle. You pass a small house. The window is open. You hear someone groaning inside, followed by a splash. You don't ask. You don't want to know. And then, just for a moment, a breeze blows in from the east, clean, cool, almost fragrant. You close your eyes and savor it. Then the wind shifts, and the scent of the pigsty hits you like divine punishment. You sneeze, a dog barks, a child screams something about a poop ghost.
You keep walking. It's barely past noon, and medieval hygiene? It's just getting started.
You've made it to the outskirts of the village, and the air is, miraculously, less weaponized. Fewer chamber pots, more trees. But don't let the greenery fool you. Sanitation doesn't magically improve just because you're standing near a bush. In fact, for most medieval folk, the great outdoors was their preferred place to do the unholy. Because why go to a public privy when the woods are free, the wind is kind, and there's a stump that kind of looks like a chair? You wander off the path and find a quiet spot. This is nature's toilet. And today, that's your best option. You squat behind a tree. The ground is soft, damp, and alive. You regret not checking for nettles or snakes or whatever creature just hissed under your left thigh. But the deed is done. There's no toilet paper, of course, so you scan the area. A crumpled leaf, risky. A tuft of moss, spongy, promising. A rock, dangerous but effective. You pick the moss and hope it wasn't just part of someone else's failed bathroom adventure. One wipe, two wipes, a sigh. Done. You bury it, sort of. You kick some dirt over the mess and pretend that counts as sanitation. Back on the road, you spot a small river trickling through a bend in the trees. Peaceful, idyllic, deadly. You know by now that this water is where people wash, dump, soak, and sometimes lose a body or two. It's been blessed and cursed, defiled and revered. You splash your hands and decide not to think about it too hard. Further along, you pass a shepherd relieving himself against a tree, completely unbothered by your presence. You wave, he waves back, midstream. There's no shame, no privacy, just efficiency. You keep walking. Near the pasture, you hear singing. A group of washerwomen has gathered near a larger stream. They're scrubbing linens with ashes and stones, humming hymns while stomping on the fabric like grapes. You notice a pile of underclothes beside them, yellowed, crusted, still warm from whoever last wore them. One woman waves you off when you approach too close. This is their space, their territory. And yes, they also pee in this stream when necessary. You nod, you understand. Later in the afternoon, you pass a construction site, some poor souls building a new cottage. One man stops hammering and heads behind a stack of timber. You know what he's doing. So does everyone else. No one comments. That's just how it's done. No porta potties, no break rooms, just a tree and the wind. In larger towns, there's slightly more infrastructure. You might find garderobes built into the walls of stone buildings, small rooms with holes in the floor that empty directly into the moat or the alley below. You look up and spot one now, a tiny wooden box jutting out from the second story of a merchant's house. Someone's using it. You hear the echo. You step back just in time. A splash, a curse. A narrowly avoided baptism. You stop at a nearby tavern. The barkeep is friendly. He offers you ale, a stew, and more importantly, a chance to use the indoor bucket behind the barrels. It's exactly what you expect. Dark, damp, splintery, and surrounded by flies that have seen too much. You go anyway. You've lowered your standards. You left them back in Section 1. After dinner, you help a few locals clean up the pigsty. This involves shoveling more than just hay. One man jokes that pigs are cleaner than humans. You laugh, then realize he's serious. In the corner of the yard is a latrine trench, a shallow ditch dug for the specific purpose of collecting human waste. It's supposed to be temporary. It's been here 5 years. Someone tosses in a handful of straw and shrugs. Fertilizer, they say. You don't ask what they're fertilizing. You head back toward the village. It's dusk now, and people are using their chamber pots one last time before sleep. You can hear it happening through thin wooden walls, grunts, splashes, murmured complaints. One old woman yells at her husband for missing. Again. Some toss the contents out the window with a shout. Others walk to the ditch behind the church and dump it there. You join the procession. Your own pot sloshes as you walk. The ditch burps. You return home. Back in your hovel, the family pot is set near the fire again. Still warm, still half full.
You decide not to empty it again. Tomorrow's problem. You lie down on your straw mattress. Someone next to you snores. A baby coughs. A rat scuttles near your foot. You scratch your leg and realize you may have sat in something. You sigh, and just before you fall asleep, you hear it. A splash, a window, a curse, a goat scream. Medieval plumbing in action. Morning again. The sun is barely up, the rooster is late, and your bladder is ahead of schedule. You fumble in the dark for the chamber pot. It's where it always is, just past your sleeping cousin, between the wall and a stack of onions someone forgot to eat 6 months ago. You nudge your way over, groggy, hoping no one else filled it in the night. Spoiler, they did. You squat, you aim, you hope. The floor creaks, someone groans. You whisper an apology to no one in particular. Then, relief, followed by regret. The pot sloshes when you set it back down, and you pray the goat doesn't knock it over again like last week. You crawl back into bed, but it's too late. You're awake now, and so is your nose. The smell hits first, then the heat. The fire has warmed the room just enough to reawaken the full bouquet of overnight bodily emissions. The chamber pot is only part of it. There's the damp socks, the dog's breath, the collective breath of 5 people who haven't brushed their teeth since birth, and of course, the ever-present must of hay, mold, and old sins. You step outside for air, and you're not alone. Half the village is already up, wandering to and from the ditch behind the houses, each one carrying a pot, a bucket, or, in some cases, nothing at all. A man squats near the fence like he's claiming territory. A toddler pees into a boot. You just nod and keep walking. You pass by the communal latrine trench, still open from the night before. Someone has added a board across the top, like a very sad bench. You see a man seated there now, reading a scroll and humming. Multitasking. You respect it. The trench bubbles. You move on. Later that morning, you help a neighbor clear out her privy shed, a wooden outhouse tucked behind a vegetable patch. It leans left, like it's tired of existing. Inside is a hole over a pit, surrounded by old rags, dry leaves, and one very brave spider. You shovel out the worst of it and throw lime powder into the hole. It barely helps. She thanks you with a hunk of stale bread and a nod. In medieval terms, that's love. Work begins. You haul bricks again. The sun rises, the sweat returns, and by midday, you need to relieve yourself again. There's no chamber pot nearby. The ditch is too far. You walk to the alley between 2 thatched huts and make do. It's shadowy, secluded, sort of. You hear footsteps and stop, but the footsteps don't stop. They join you. Now you're both standing there, side by side, peeing silently into the same patch of grass. You don't make eye contact. You both nod. A sacred bond is formed and never acknowledged again. By mid-afternoon, the tavern's outhouse is a beacon of hope. You stop in, order a small beer, and request access to the bucket. It's not a euphemism. Behind the kitchen is a half-room, half-stall structure with a ceramic pot inside. There's a curtain. No door, no dignity. You pull the curtain and do your business. Outside, you hear a bard playing a lute. Life continues. After work, you return home. Your little brother has spilled the chamber pot. Again. It's now under the bed. He swears he tried to clean it. With what, you ask? He points to your pillow. You sit down. You stand up. You light some dried herbs and hope they cover the smell. They don't, but they make you sneeze hard enough to forget for a second. Evening falls. Your mother gives you a look that says, "Go clean the pot." You do. You carry it outside, avoiding the goat, the dog, and your brother's wide-eyed apology. You reach the trench. You dump it. The trench gulps like it's hungry. The splash, somehow louder at night. You rinse the pot in the barrel. The water's cloudy. You swirl it around and pour it out. Good enough. You leave it by the fire again, ready for the next round. Someone else enters the room holding their own pot. You both nod. It's a dance, a rhythm, a daily ballet of liquids, containers, ditches, and shame. But you're used to it now. You've adjusted. Medieval toilet life is no longer horrifying. It's just the background music of existence. And tonight, you lie in bed, stomach full of beans, bladder full of regret, and hope your dreams aren't interrupted by an urgent wake-up and the cold touch of ceramic in the dark. You close your eyes. The goat sneezes, and somehow you fall asleep anyway. It's morning again. Your eyes creak open like the hinges on your front gate, and you feel it. That ominous pressure in your gut. The breakfast beans have declared war, and your body is the battlefield. But you're not rushing to the chamber pot this time. No, today is different. Today, you're traveling. Maybe it's a pilgrimage. Maybe it's a market day. Maybe someone died and their cousin's goat inheritance must be settled 3 villages away. Doesn't matter. You're on the road, and the road has no toilets. You tie your belt tighter to hold everything in. Your pants, your dignity, and the bubbling rebellion within. The countryside is vast and pretty if you squint past the flies and horse droppings. Trees wave in the breeze like they're mocking your clenched stomach. You walk and walk and walk. You look around for a bush with potential. But every bush has potential. And every bush already has someone behind it. A merchant, a monk, a peasant, a nobleman who has dismounted his horse and is squatting like he's making a business deal with the earth. Eventually you find your own bush, a decent one, some privacy. You shuffle into position and let nature take its medieval course. You finish, reach for your options. No toilet paper, obviously. You've got a few choices. Leaves, scratchy. Moss, luxurious. A smooth rock, bold. Or the hem of your undertunic, desperate. Today, it's moss. A gentle dab. A quiet thank you to the forest. And you're on your way. Back in town, public life resumes. At the tavern, someone knocks over the piss bucket again. It seeps under the table like a slow-moving medieval lava. No one flinches. The barkeep sighs and tosses a handful of straw over it. Problem solved. The local church? It has a small outhouse behind the apse, mostly for the monks, but sometimes for desperate passers-by. It's stone, cool, and smells like incense, barely masking despair. You sneak in. Inside is a bench with a hole, a bucket beneath, and a wooden carving of a saint above your head who's definitely judging you. You whisper an apology to St. Gregory and hurry out. Later that day, a noble procession passes through the village. Horses, trumpets, banners. It's majestic, until one of the noblewomen leans out of her carriage and asks to borrow the tavern's bucket. Turns out, even silk-clad aristocrats aren't immune to digestion. But nobles do it differently. They carry portable commodes, little wooden boxes with padded seats and compartments for scented herbs. You see one carried by a red-faced servant, trailing behind the lady like an embarrassed accessory. Royalty, it seems, poops in private, but not alone. Back at your hut, someone's building a 2-seater privy. That's right, 2 holes, side by side, for couples or siblings, or anyone who likes awkward eye contact while relieving themselves.
You don't question it. You just hope your house gets one someday. You end your day helping your neighbor dig a new trench behind the pigsty. It's a big one, a community latrine for festivals. You shovel dirt, sweat dripping, trying not to breathe too deeply. Flies swarm like they were invited. The hole is deep. The future is grim. But it's progress. You wipe your forehead with your sleeve and think, one day, someone will invent plumbing. You don't know what that means, but it feels like hope. That night, the sky is clear, the stars are bright, and your stomach is mostly quiet. You lie down by the fire, pot nearby, hay poking your back, and think to yourself, you're managing. You're surviving. And in a world where toilets are a luxury and privacy is a myth, that's a miracle. You slept on a straw mattress, not like the charming cottagecore TikTok kind. We're talking decomposing straw stuffed into a rat-chewed sack, maybe with some goat hair for luxury. You share this bed with 3 of your younger siblings, a dying chicken, and a mysterious damp spot that you've learned to ignore for survival reasons. There's no pillow. You used your arm. Now your arm has a numb tingling sensation and a faint smell of old stew. That's probably because you fell asleep still wearing the same tunic you've had on since last Lent. You look around your one-room house. It smells like boiled onions, livestock farts, and wood smoke. There are no windows, just holes. The floor is packed dirt, good for soaking up spilled soup, bad for your feet, which have cracked into medieval origami from months of barefoot walking. And you know what's funny? This is middle class. You swing your legs over the side of the mattress and put your feet directly onto the dirt. Something small scuttles past. You ignore it. It's not worth the effort. Nothing is before your first hot drink of the day, except you don't get that. Instead, you get to step into your morning routine, medieval style. The first thing you do? Scratch. Not because it's helpful, lice don't care about your fingernails, but because it's the only small comfort left in a world with no soap. You scratch your scalp, your armpits, your shins. Your fingernails are black from dirt and dried something. You stopped asking what months ago. You cough. Thick, wet, not alarming, just normal. Everyone coughs. The air inside your hut is a delicate blend of damp wood smoke, foot stench, and stale goat breath. Ventilation is a concept you're not familiar with, but you suspect it would be nice. Your family begins to stir. Your father farts in his sleep. Your mother gurgles out a short prayer, something about the Virgin Mary and not dying of worms today. A rooster outside screams like it's being murdered. You think about screaming too, but you already know it won't help. There's no alarm clock. Your body has learned to wake itself up before the sun fully rises, mostly because that's when the rats go to bed and the fleas get lazy. You stand. Your knees crack. You're 22, which in medieval years means your body is older than the bones of Stonehenge. You reach for your belt. It's leather. Probably from the same pig that made last night's soup. You strap on your one knife, the medieval equivalent of a phone and a wallet in one. It's not for protection, it's for cutting turnips, slicing bread, and threatening your cousin if he tries to steal your egg again. You step outside. It's cold, wet, and smells like the entire village is sharing one toilet, which, by the way, you are. There are people already awake, a neighbor beating her rug with a stick, 2 kids chasing a dog with a stick, and an old man yelling at a stick. You nod to them like you're part of a sitcom and not a biological hazard in boots. You walk behind the house to take a piss. No bathroom, no privacy, just a slight slope in the earth you've all decided is the pee place. You do your business. You don't look at the flies. They don't look at you. It's an agreement. Back inside, breakfast is happening. It's not glamorous.
Someone stirs a pot of thick gray sludge made from oats, cabbage, and last night's sins. You sit cross-legged and scoop some into your mouth with your hand. It's warm, and that's good enough. No one talks much. You all smell bad, but none of you know that, because everyone smells bad. Your brother has open sores on his arms. Your sister's eye is crusted shut. No one comments. Health is a privilege, and you don't have time for privilege. Someone farts again. You smile. It's going to be a good day. By medieval standards.
You stretch, sort of. Your back makes a sound like a log snapping in a wet forest, and your shoulders feel like they've been carrying sacks of bricks, which, to be fair, they probably have. You're not sure if the ache is from yesterday's labor or from sleeping on straw that doubles as pest housing. Now it's time for morning hygiene. Except that word doesn't mean what you think it means. There's no toothbrush, no sink, no minty swish of mouthwash. The idea of oral care is about as foreign as space travel. Your teeth are there, mostly. You've got maybe 24 out of 32, and half of them wobble when you chew. The others are coated in plaque, bread residue, and regret. But hey, some folks in the village have a little wooden stick they chew on to scrub their teeth. Not you, though. That stick was burned in the firewood pile last winter. You suck your teeth a little and hope for the best. If you're lucky, the morning's oatmeal will scrape off some of the rot. And your breath? Your breath could kill a crow mid-flight. Still, you're ahead of the game. Some people are too poor for even oatmeal, so they just chew on a chunk of hard black bread and call it a morning exfoliation. Next, the chamber pot. It sits in the corner of the room, steaming slightly if it's winter. It's full, because, surprise, nobody wants to empty it in the dark while being stared at by a goat. You pick it up like a cursed relic and tiptoe outside to toss the contents into the shared ditch behind the house. The same ditch everyone else uses. The same one you all live downwind from. The splash echoes. It's not a satisfying sound. You rinse the pot with a ladle of water from the communal barrel, but that just swirls the filth into new shapes. No soap, obviously. Soap is a fantasy whispered by noblewomen in towers. You don't wash it, you just acknowledge it's less full now. Good enough. You take a moment to splash some water on your face. The water comes from a wooden bucket filled with rainwater and bits of sky debris, leaves, dirt, one tiny dead beetle who tried his best. You slap your cheeks with your hands. It's cold. It hurts. You feel slightly more human and significantly more damp. There's a rag near the fire. It might have once been a towel, or a shirt, or a curtain. Who knows? You use it to pat your face dry. It smells like smoke and fermented milk. Your skin is now both cleaner and more infected, which is a truly medieval paradox. Your hair? We'll get to that later, but spoiler, it's matted. Then comes the fun part, communal grooming. Your sister is plucking fleas from your hair. She doesn't ask. She just grabs your head and starts picking through it like a gorilla searching for treasure. She flicks the bugs into a ceramic bowl. This is bonding time. You itch. She clicks her tongue. It's practically a spa day. And you return the favor. You go through her hair too. You find a louse the size of a rice grain. She names it Gerald and crushes it between her nails with the satisfaction of someone committing vengeance. A rat scurries across the ceiling beam. You both look up. It pauses. You lock eyes. The rat nods. You nod back. This is how roommates operate now. Now your uncle joins you for the next sacred ritual, scraping his feet with a piece of broken pottery. His calluses are hard enough to be used in construction. Dead skin falls like parmesan. He offers you a turn. You politely decline. He shrugs and keeps scraping. The village bell rings in the distance. That means it's time to pretend like you're ready for the day. You toss a faded wool tunic over your head. It's damp, of course. Everything is damp. The air has been moist since you were born. You think you were baptized in dampness, possibly in this same tunic. You slide on your boots, which are made from leather, patched animal guts, and hope. The right one has a hole where your big toe peeks out like a tiny prisoner waving for help. You step outside. The village smells worse now. The sun has warmed the night's waste, and all the compost pits and animal droppings are beginning to bake into a rich, medieval perfume. You take it in. It burns your nostrils. You say nothing. Your neighbor is yelling at his cow. The cow is winning the argument. A dog runs by with something in its mouth. Might be food, might be a bone, might be somebody's old foot. A baby cries. A man sneezes and curses the devil. You nod at all of them. Then it's off to work. You won't be back home for hours. But that's fine. Home is mostly a place where you marinate in body heat and animal odor. At least outside, you can pretend that wind is the same as bathing. As you walk through the village, you pass by a woman brushing her teeth with charcoal. She smiles at you. Her teeth are black, but not from decay, from powder. It's a local trend, you think. Charcoal and ashes. It's supposed to clean your teeth, or at least make you feel like they're clean. Or maybe just cover the yellow with gray. You smile back. Your breath battles hers in the air like opposing armies. A bird drops something from the sky. You don't look up. You've learned not to. The church is nearby, and a monk is standing outside washing his hands in a stone basin. Monks are weirdly into washing, not because they understand germs, but because they believe being physically clean makes you spiritually better. Unfortunately, he's just rinsing in the same water he used to clean 5 other monks' feet. You bow respectfully. He sneezes on your shoe.
And that's how your day of cleaning begins. You're about half an hour into your day and you're already filthy again. But it's not your fault. Cleanliness in medieval times wasn't a destination. It was a myth whispered about in dreams and then laughed at by everyone awake. You're working now, hauling sacks of grain or bricks, or possibly just helping your neighbor scream at his pig again. Either way, your body is moving. Your sweat is back in full production, and your shirt now sticks to you like a second, damp, itchy skin. Naturally, you start thinking, maybe I should wash up later. Cute. Let's talk about water. The river runs through the edge of the village. It's beautiful, really, if you don't look directly at it or breathe while near it. The surface sparkles in the sunlight, and you can see fish swimming just below the surface. Dead fish, rotting fish, fish that have absorbed things water should never contain, like, say, corpse particles, and a full chamber pot or 3. You see, everyone uses the river for everything: drinking, dumping, washing, praying, disposing of animals, disposing of other things we don't talk about. The river is like that one coworker who takes on way too many responsibilities and slowly decays from the inside out. You approach the river cautiously, like you're making a wish and also hoping not to catch leprosy. Some women are standing knee-deep in the shallows, pounding laundry on rocks with a rhythm that feels almost musical, until you realize the sound is mostly wet slapping and muttered curses. The clothes come out only slightly less gray than when they went in, and now with the added bonus of river-scented mildew. You wonder if washing your face here is worth it. It might be, if you enjoy pink eye. Instead, you scoop a bit of water into a wooden bowl and swirl it around until the floating chunks spin away. You splash it on your face. It's cold. It's invigorating. It might also be a biohazard, but at least now you feel less crusty. Technically, there are wells. Some villages have them, and yours even has one, if you can wait in line behind 17 people, a goat, and that one guy who always starts political arguments halfway through drawing a bucket. His opinions are awful, and his hygiene is worse. He smells like fermented regret and coughs like a haunted fireplace. Still, well water is cleaner by medieval standards, which means only 30% of people who drink it violently erupt from both ends. A win. You recall a story someone told you once, that nobles drink only from springs, crystal clear fountains guarded by birds and poetry. You've never seen one. You're not even sure springs are real. It's possible the upper class just drinks imported wine to avoid the taste of bacteria and the flavor of the poor. Speaking of which, let's discuss drinking water. You don't drink it. Water is dangerous. It carries sickness, worms, curses, and probably the ghost of the last guy who drank it. So instead, most people drink weak beer or ale. Even children. even nuns. Sometimes especially nuns. It's low in alcohol, brewed with herbs and barley, and boiled during the process, which means it might not kill you immediately. It's hydration with a buzz and a blessing. So your daily drink is essentially hot bread water. You sip it out of a wooden mug that used to belong to your grandfather. You know this because it still has his tooth marks on the rim. You feel refreshed. For about 5 minutes. Then the sun climbs higher, the work keeps piling up, and your armpits begin evolving new life forms. You think briefly about jumping in the river. Not for a swim, no one swims. This isn't a holiday. You'd be fully clothed, just flailing in the water and praying not to catch something that makes your insides fall out. But even so, bathing is complicated. Because, let's be honest, bathing isn't regular. For peasants, it's an event, a treat, a luxury. Most people wash once a week. Maybe. In summer, if there's time, and if nobody died in the tub recently. Even for kings, baths are planned like small festivals. Someone has to carry the water, heat it over fires, pour it into a giant barrel or wooden tub, and then guard the door so no one peeks or tries to steal the leftover bathwater to use as soup base. You recall the one time you had a full bath, 2 years ago. Feast day. Your mother boiled water, added herbs, maybe even a pinch of salt for that spa effect. You sat in it for 15 glorious minutes until your cousin climbed in without asking and the mood was ruined. That was the last time you were clean from the neck down. Still, rumors fly around about towns with public bathhouses, luxuries of the wealthy, steam-filled chambers where people sit naked together, scrubbing each other's backs and whispering secrets. You've never been, but you've heard tales. Some say it's cleansing, others say it's sinful. One priest called it a gateway to moral collapse, which only made people more interested. Today, you just settle for pouring a bucket of water over your head. You tip it slowly. It's freezing. Your skin tightens, your lungs seize, and you suck in air through clenched teeth. But you feel less disgusting. For now. The lice are probably annoyed. Good. Let them suffer too. You shake out your hair. Water splashes in every direction. You hear someone shout, probably because you just baptized them involuntarily. You wring out your shirt. It drips onto your already soaked pants. You don't care. You're cleanish, it won't last. But in medieval life, 5 minutes of slightly better is worth celebrating. You've finished your daily chores, or at least enough of them to avoid being yelled at by the village reeve. It's now midday. The sun's at its peak, the stench is intensifying, and it's time for something special, a trip to the bathhouse. Yes, the bathhouse, a place where you can wash off the crust, the shame, and possibly the fleas. You've saved a few copper coins, skipped meals, and lied about finishing your fieldwork just for this. You're not excited, you're cautiously optimistic, which is the medieval equivalent of joy. Let's set the scene. The bathhouse isn't a marble oasis with fountains and flower petals. It's a wooden building that leans slightly to the left, like it's exhausted from years of pretending to be hygienic. Steam curls out of the windows. That's the good news. The bad news is that the steam smells like damp cheese and feet. You step inside and immediately regret it. It's hot. Not pleasant hot, suffocating, sticky, wet musk hot. The air clings to your skin like breath. It smells like sweat, old soap, and people who haven't used either properly. You're hit with a wall of body odor so thick it could be used as insulation, and the floor, slick. With what? Unknown. Definitely a mix of water, oil, and betrayal. There's a large central pool. People float in it like dumplings in soup. The water is cloudy, milky even. That's not intentional. It's just what happens when 30 people bathe in the same tub, scrubbing everything except their dignity. You look around, naked bodies everywhere. Hairy, wrinkled, pale, splotchy, scabby, sweaty. Everyone's pretending this is normal, and it is. For them. You try not to stare, but there's a man shaving his armpits with a knife and a child flossing with a goose feather. You're out of your depth. Someone hands you a bucket. You nod like you know what to do. There are two options here. Sit in the shared stew of humanity. Take your bucket to the side and do a self-service rinse, like a broke college student in a medieval hostel. You choose the bucket. The water's warm, which should be comforting. It isn't. You wonder how many other people's skin cells are floating in it. You try not to imagine. You close your eyes, scoop the water, and pour it over your chest. It rolls down your torso in sluggish waves. Your pores open. Your shame does too. Then comes the soap. Soap. It's not the flowery, foamy kind you're imagining. It's a dense, waxy brick made from animal fat and ashes. It smells like smoked bacon and sadness. You rub it between your hands. It doesn't lather. It just gets greasy, like you're oiling yourself for a roast. You scrub anyway. Armpits, neck, under your tunic if you're feeling bold. The grime lifts off in streaks. The water becomes cloudier, thicker, angrier. You catch a glimpse of someone picking at their feet. Another is squeezing a blackhead on their chest like it owes him rent. You do not make eye contact. Someone coughs, a wet, hacking cough that echoes through the chamber like a dying goat's final wish. You turn around and see an old woman massaging her scalp with butter. You don't ask why. You've learned not to ask. Medieval people will rub anything on anything if someone tells them it'll prevent the plague. Suddenly, there's a burst of laughter. A group of monks are here too. Bathhouses weren't just for peasants. Clergy used them too, though with more modesty and less shouting. Except these guys? Naked, oily, and arguing about whose saint had the cleanest soul. You hear the words divine exfoliation and wonder what century you were cursed into. You catch yourself in a polished bronze mirror because glass is for the rich, and see your own face. Red, flushed, wet, haunted, but also cleaner? You look less like a moldy potato and more like a bruised apple. Progress. Now comes the oil. Yes, oil. Bathhouses offered massages, sort of. There's a man in the corner slathering customers in perfumed oil made from animal fat, herbs, and prayer. You decline. Last time you let someone rub you with rose-scented goose grease, you itched for 2 weeks and smelled like a brothel's chimney. Instead, you grab a fresh towel. Fresh, meaning it hasn't been used more than twice today. You dry off. Not fully, just enough to stop dripping. You feel marginally renewed. The towel smears more than it absorbs. You shrug. This is your best-case scenario. Then you step back into your clothes. They're still filthy. Your shirt now clings to your cleanish skin like regret. Your boots are wetter than when you took them off. You sigh. On the way out, you pass a pile of herbs burning in the corner. That's for purification. The idea is the smoke drives away disease. You breathe it in. It smells like sage and desperation, but you feel safer, which is 90% of hygiene back then, illusion and hope. A child runs by, screaming joyfully, completely nude and soaked. You sidestep him. Barely. He giggles. You smile. He probably peed in the pool. Outside, the sun stabs your eyes. You blink like a newborn deer. You survived the bathhouse. You're still damp, still itchy, still emotionally scarred, but physically, you've reached the medieval equivalent of a shower and a mint. You walk home slowly, letting the breeze dry your skin. You're 80% clean, 60% recontaminated, and 100% proud of yourself, until a cart full of manure splashes you head to toe. Of course. Welcome back to the Middle Ages. Back at home, after your soul-searching scrub at the medieval cesspool spa, you're feeling okay. Not clean, that's not a thing, but at least differently dirty. And now, it's time to address something far more treacherous than bathhouses and chamber pots: shaving. You catch your reflection in a murky bucket of water, the Middle Ages answer to a mirror. You tilt your head and take a good look at the wilderness growing on your face. Your beard isn't charming. It's not knight in shining armor material. It's more bandit in a bush meets damp moss in distress. But you can't just let it go. People may be walking bags of bacteria, but social norms are social norms. A scruffy face implies poverty, neglect, and, in some places, witchcraft. So today, you shave. You start with the tools. First, your razor, not the 5-blade titanium-coated kind. You're holding a piece of iron that's been sharpened on a rock by someone with arthritis. It's about as precise as a butter knife duct-taped to a spoon. You don't have shaving cream. The idea hasn't even been born yet. Instead, you smear a thin layer of animal fat on your cheeks, probably lard from this morning's porridge pig. It smells like sadness and bacon. You tell yourself it's moisturizing. Now you begin. The blade skates across your jawline with all the grace of a plow through gravel. Every pull feels like it's one swipe away from an impromptu tracheotomy. Blood bubbles up almost instantly. You dab at it with a rag that may or may not have been used to clean something unspeakable. The sting reminds you you're alive. You make it halfway down your cheek when you hit a bump. Ingrown hair, pimple, tiny demon sprouting from your skin. You dig the blade in to be sure. You scream, quietly, through your teeth. There's no anesthetic, no aloe. You dab the wound with vinegar and whimper. It burns so badly your soul tries to escape through your eyeballs. You feel lightheaded, possibly due to blood loss, or the psychological toll of being your own medieval surgeon. You power through. Because grooming in the Middle Ages isn't about vanity, it's about not dying from infection and ridicule. Once your cheeks are shaved, you attempt the chin. Mistake. Your blade snags on something coarse, probably a hardened oat or bit of hay, and drags it down like it's pulling up roots. You reconsider everything, your hygiene, your ancestors, your life choices. Eventually, you finish. You're bleeding from 3 places and sweating like a pig in confession, but your face is hairless. Mostly. One patch under your jaw still has some fuzz. You decide it adds character. Then comes hair care. You run your fingers through your scalp. You immediately regret it. Your hair is thick, tangled, matted, and loaded with a substance you don't recognize. It could be grease. It could be dirt. It could be the remnants of a mouse nest. You don't ask questions. There's no shampoo. There's ash. Actual ash. Some people mix it with water to create a kind of gritty paste. It's supposed to absorb oil. You smear it on your scalp like you're seasoning yourself for a medieval barbecue. It smells like yesterday's firewood and humiliation. You massage it in. You pretend it's working. You rinse it off in a half-full bucket of lukewarm disappointment. Then you reach for your conditioner. It's goose fat. No, seriously. People believed rubbing goose fat into your hair made it shiny and manageable. You scoop up a glob, sticky, cold, viscous, and smear it through your ends. It doesn't make your hair softer. It makes your hair into a weapon. If someone lights a match near your head, you might explode. Now, your hair is slick, your scalp is sore, and your dignity is officially in hiding. You grab a wooden comb, one missing half its teeth, and try to pull it through. You manage 2 strokes before it snaps. You sigh. You wrap your hair in a linen cloth and pretend it's intentional. Maybe someone will think you're a scholar, or just hiding the plague. You glance at your eyebrows. You leave them. No one had time for eyebrow maintenance, except maybe monks, and only the neurotic ones. You take a moment to breathe. The worst is over. You're groomed. By 14th century standards, you're basically a Calvin Klein model. And now, time to help your grandfather with his grooming. He's ancient, possibly immortal. His beard has its own zip code. You heat a small blade over a candle and prepare to shave him like you're carving roast meat. He growls. You growl back. It's a bonding ritual. You nick him only 3 times. Success. You finish by wiping his face with a damp rag and a prayer. He nods, silently approving, then shuffles back to the fire to stew in his own steam cloud. You look around the room. Everyone's doing something to clean themselves, or failing at it. Your sister scrubs her feet with a rock. Your cousin is pulling lice off his shirt and placing them in a collection jar for fun. Your mother is wiping her teeth with a bit of salt and dry twig. This is hygiene. This is effort. This is survival. You sit down by the hearth and poke at a pot of stew. You're exhausted. From shaving, from scraping, from not stabbing yourself fatally. Your arm itches. You scratch it without thinking and flick something hard. You bathed in slime, shaved with a prison shank, and conditioned your hair with barnyard grease. Now, let's address the one part of your body that even your nightmares try to ignore. Your clothes. You reach for your tunic, same one you've worn for months. It's brown. Was it always brown? Unclear. It might have once been green, or beige, or just cleaner. But now it's crusty in some places, soft in others, and has developed its own weather system. You shake it out. Dust puffs into the air like you just released an ancient curse. Something skitters out of the sleeve. You choose not to pursue it. If it's important, it'll come back for revenge. Here's the truth. People in the Middle Ages didn't wash their clothes often. Why? Because washing clothes was expensive. Because soap was rare. Because water was limited. But mostly because nobody wanted to die from pneumonia after putting on a wet shirt in winter. So instead of cleaning your clothes regularly, you just aired them out. You hang them in the sun. You beat them with a stick. You mutter an apology to the fleas and hope the wind takes care of the rest. But today, for some stupid reason, you've decided to attempt laundry. You carry your clothes, tunic, undertunic, socks made from regret, to the communal washing spot near the river. It's where everyone goes to pretend they're doing something about their hygiene. You find a flat rock, slap the tunic down, and start beating it like it owes you rent. Next comes soap. You have two options: wood ash mixed with lye, a caustic chemical that eats through dirt, fabric, and your hopes. Urine. No, not as a joke. Actual urine. Fermented, aged, collected from chamber pots and saved in jugs labeled, "Do not drink again." Turns out ammonia is a powerful cleanser. So your neighbors soak their linens in old pee, stir it like soup, and rinse it in the same river where everyone bathes, dumps waste, and probably gave birth last week. Today you choose the safer option: ashes and water. You rub the mix into your tunic. It immediately stiffens like it's trying to escape its own fate. The smell is acrid, like if a fireplace had halitosis. You scrub. You rinse. You beat it on the rock again, just for emotional closure. After what feels like an hour, your shirt looks slightly less shameful, still not clean, but less dangerous to society. You wring it out. The water that falls out is the color of regret. You try not to gag. Then comes drying. You hang it over a branch. The wind does its best, so does the sun, but nothing in this world can fully kill the embedded funk of months-old armpit grease and trench sweat. Your tunic now smells like wet campfire and old garlic. You do the same to your socks. They're less footwear and more cloth tubes of fungal despair. You scrub until the holes get bigger. Now you have toe windows. Fashion. Your undertunic? You're tempted to throw it in the fire, but linen's expensive, and you already owe your neighbor half a duck for borrowing his lye last week. So you scrub, you rinse, and you accept that it will never be white again. Medieval white is just light brown. Meanwhile, other villagers are washing too. A woman nearby is boiling her husband's pants in a metal pot. Another is shaking out a cloak full of straw, beetles, and childhood trauma. A boy is scrubbing a pair of leather shoes using what appears to be sand and a prayer. There's a girl washing her hair in the same water you just dumped your sock broth into. You feel guilty for a second. Then you remember, everyone's done it to everyone. There are no innocent parties in medieval laundry crimes. Back home, you hang your clothes near the fire to dry faster. They come out stiff, crunchy. You could slice bread with your tunic, but at least now they smell less like rotting soup and more like smoke and mild despair. You pull on your semi-clean shirt. It scrapes your skin like burlap made of broken dreams. Your trousers are better, meaning they're intact. The wool itches, but you don't bleed. That's an upgrade. Now comes the fun part, your shoes. Your boots are made of leather that's seen war, famine, and possibly the inside of a cow's colon. The soles are thinning, the stitching's unraveling. One has a nail sticking through the heel that you've just learned to avoid by walking like you're dodging landmines. You stuff a bit of straw into the toes, not for comfort, just to stop your feet from freezing solid when it rains. You know it's going to rain soon. You can smell it. Or maybe that's your cousin. Anyway, you're dressed. You're moderately dry. And for once, you feel like less of a sentient compost pile. That's when your little brother vomits on your shoe. No warning, no apology, just a tiny geyser of cabbage and trauma, right on your left foot. You close your eyes. You take a deep breath. You clean your boot with a handful of grass and the last of your willpower. Then you stomp your foot until the mess feels like part of the original boot design. Medieval fashion, now featuring biohazards. You look around the room. Everyone is getting dressed. Everyone smells like they fought a war with a swamp and lost. But you're ahead of the curve. You've washed, you've scrubbed, you've sanitized with ashes and smoke. And for a fleeting moment, you feel proud. Then the dog pees on your drying socks. Of course it does. Now that you've endured the sacred torment of medieval laundry and survived the public urination of both people and livestock, it's time to handle a different battlefield altogether. Your hair. Yes, your hair. You've already smeared ashes and goose fat into it once this week, which means you're overdue for another round of medieval hair care. And calling it care is generous. It's more like low-budget damage control with ingredients stolen from a barn and a witch's spice rack. You sit near the hearth. The heat makes your scalp sweat before you even begin. That's good. It softens the crust. You pull out your grooming toolkit. A wooden comb with 2 teeth left, a handful of dry rosemary, and a small pot of animal fat that's been slowly melting by the fire since breakfast. Your cousin joins you. She's got a knife, a bored expression, and lice. Not on her, on you. And she's decided it's time to extract them. She doesn't ask. She just grabs your head like it owes her money and starts picking through your roots. It's an ancient ritual. Not out of love, not out of hygiene, just necessity. Left unchecked, the lice multiply, build a small empire on your scalp, start minting their own coins, and eventually declare independence. She finds the first one. Big boy, she mutters. She crushes it between her thumbnail and the comb handle. Pop, you wince. She grins. She finds 3 more, flicks them into the fire like she's performing a flea exorcism. You sit there, still, staring into the flames, and wonder if your soul just left your body. Then it's your turn to check her hair, tit for tat. You dig into the tangles like you're searching for treasure in a bramble bush. You find a flea, you name it Sir Geoffrey, and squash it with dignity. It's bonding. Violent, itchy bonding. Once the lice are mostly gone, it's time for round 2. Herbal scrubbing. You take the rosemary, dried, brittle, stolen from a monastery garden, and crumble it into your hands. You mix it with a dab of warm goose fat, creating a chunky, fragrant sludge. It smells like Thanksgiving dinner got punched by a forest. You rub it into your scalp. It stings. That means it's working. You massage it in, slowly, working your fingers through the knots. Your nails scrape the dirt off your scalp. Underneath the fat and the ash and the trauma, you begin to remember what it feels like to not be crusty. It's almost spiritual. Your cousin hands you the comb. You take it. You brace yourself. The first tug rips out a chunk of hair. You scream internally. You keep going. Comb, tug, rip, sigh, repeat. Every stroke brings out tangles, bugs, a few emotional flashbacks, and enough dead hair to knit a small tunic. You pile it all in a corner like some kind of ritual sacrifice to the hygiene gods. Eventually you get the comb through from root to tip, once. Victory. Your hair is now slick, pungent, and vaguely pointy from all the weird angles it's taken, but it's yours. And it's clean, again, by medieval standards, which means it no longer actively assaults the senses. You wrap it in a cloth to keep the grease from staining your pillow, which, again, is just a sack of old hay with mousebite marks on it. You lay the cloth on your head like a medieval bonnet of honor. You glance at your father. He hasn't washed his hair since the Crusades. It's solid, like a helmet made of sadness. You consider offering to help. Then you remember the last time he bit someone during a combing session. You move on. Your sister is now attempting to style her hair. She has one ribbon, 3 wooden beads, and a dream. She braids her hair in thick, ropey strands and threads the beads through the ends. It's not fashion. It's function. Braiding helps keep the lice colonies contained. It also prevents you from accidentally swallowing your own hair while sleeping, which has happened before. Not pretty. Sometimes, for special occasions, people dye their hair with herbs or mud. Blonde was popular in some regions. People used lye, lemon juice, or even pigeon droppings to lighten their strands. You tried it once. You cried. You smelled like pigeon for a week. Still, there's vanity here. In the middle of filth and famine and war, people still try to look good, or at least less terrifying. Your neighbor once rubbed honey into her curls before a festival. She got swarmed by bees halfway through the feast. Tragic, but radiant. You stare into the fire, now feeling the weight of your freshly scraped scalp and greasy strands. You look clean, sort of. You feel like you tried, and that's more than most. Then your uncle walks in. He hasn't touched his hair in a decade. It's matted into one solid clump, like a medieval dreadlock made of filth and ambition. He calls it his blessing. You think it's a biohazard. He sits down next to you, scratches his head with a fork, and mutters something about lice being good luck.
You nod politely. It's easier than arguing. Suddenly, you remember something. A rare memory. Nobles sometimes wore powdered wigs. They shaved their heads, powdered them white, and wore curled hair pieces instead. Why? To hide lice, to show off wealth, and sometimes to look fancy while dying of syphilis. You wonder if the nobles ever had their cousins pick through their hair with dirty fingernails. You wonder if anyone is ever truly clean in this world. You doubt it. But tonight, your scalp doesn't itch. Your hair doesn't smell like livestock. And for the first time in weeks, you might not wake up to a flea migration on your forehead. Small wins, big lice. Welcome to medieval hair care. For 75, you've washed, shaved, scraped, combed, and survived countless parasites with names like Gerald and Sir Geoffrey. But now it's time to confront a subject you've been dreading since the sun came up: going to the bathroom. You see, in the Middle Ages, toilets weren't a private, tiled sanctuary with soft lighting and a fan that pretends it's masking sound. Toilets were holes. Literal holes. Sometimes pits, sometimes buckets. Occasionally, bridges. Let's begin with the basics. You need to relieve yourself. Your stomach is making medieval threats, and your bowels are in open rebellion. So you step outside with the urgency of someone who knows full well that hesitation means disaster. Behind your house is the communal latrine. It's a shallow ditch surrounded by buzzing flies and broken dreams. A wooden plank is balanced across it, a place to perch your suffering body while praying for a quick exit. There's no privacy, no door, no walls, just nature, neighbors, and humiliation. You squat. You contemplate your life choices.
Then you do what must be done. The stench rises like an angry spirit. It fills your nostrils, it invades your soul. It whispers to your ancestors. You breathe through your mouth, then regret that even more. Now comes the big question. What do you wipe with? There's no toilet paper, obviously. Probably your options include a fistful of hay, abrasive and judgmental, a smooth river stone, rare and icy, the sleeve of your undertunic, shameful but soft. Nothing. Don't ask how many choose this. Today you go with the hay. You grab a clump, check it for thorns or insects, and do your business. It's not effective, it's not dignified, but it happens. You toss the used hay into the pit and quickly move away, legs trembling, dignity evaporated. But that's just your latrine. Let's take a tour of some other medieval toilets. 1. Castle garderobes. If you're rich, you poop in a castle. Great, except your toilet is a stone seat with a hole that drops straight down the wall into a moat. That's right, a literal poop chute. The smell wafts back up. The splash echoes for miles. And heaven help you if a gust of wind comes the wrong way. Oh, and guess what? The moat is where people fish. Bon appetit. Number 2. Public privies. In cities, there are shared outhouses, wooden shacks where dozens of strangers relieve themselves over one giant pit. It's always full, always warm, always buzzing with activity. You sit, the wood is wet, you cry a little, then someone jiggles a door because they don't know you're inside. You screech, they apologize, you both pretend it never happened. Number 3. Chamber pots. If you don't want to go outside at night, you go in a pot. A big ceramic bowl you keep under the bed. Everyone has one. Everyone hates theirs. Some people decorate them with painted roses. It doesn't help. In the morning, someone has to empty it. Usually a child, possibly you. You grab the pot carefully like it's an ancient relic. You carry it outside, trying not to spill. Then you reach the window. Yes, the window. And you throw it. Into the street, into the gutter, into the nearest flow of open sewage that winds through the town like a lazy river of biological warfare. Before you toss it, you're supposed to shout something. It varies by country. In English towns, the traditional warning was, "Gardez-lou!" A medieval French corruption meaning, "Watch out for the water," as if this watery horror deserved such a polite name. If someone doesn't move fast enough, well, now they're baptized in community bowel sins. That's how you make enemies. Or wives. Depends on the century. You've seen it happen. You've heard the screams. You've also been on the receiving end once. You don't talk about that day. Number 4. Bridges. If you're traveling and there's no toilet in sight, you use a bridge. You squat over the edge and pretend you're majestic. You're not. You're a biological threat dangling over a public water source. Fishermen hate you. Birds hate you. You hate yourself. But the real kicker? No one washes their hands afterward. That's right, no soap, no rinse, no problem. You just wipe your hands on your tunic and move on. Or maybe dunk them in a bucket if you're feeling fancy. Germ theory doesn't exist yet. Bacteria is still considered witchcraft. Everyone's immune system is operating on pure fear. And what happens when someone gets sick from this toilet chaos?
They die. Or worse, they survive but spread it to everyone else. The streets of your village often smell like waste, because these sewage systems are just open trenches. You walk beside them daily. You step over them, sometimes into them. You once dropped a turnip into one and didn't tell anyone. You hear stories about ancient Rome, how they had working plumbing, underground sewer systems, public baths that didn't smell like goat farts. You assume it's a lie, or magic, or both. You dream of a world with porcelain thrones and two-ply tissue, but instead you squat over a hole and pray not to fall in. And yes, people have fallen in. There are tales, horrifying tales, of villagers who slipped and sank into the muck, never to return, of cesspits collapsing beneath nobles mid-squat, of unfortunate souls whose final moments were a mixture of shock, terror, and gastrointestinal betrayal.
You finish your latrine ritual, pull up your trousers, still damp, and walk back into the village with your head held high. Because you survived medieval toileting. You wiped with hay. You dodged a flying chamber pot. And you didn't fall in. That's a win. You're walking through the village now. Your hair sticky with goose fat, your shirt crackling with fire-dried sweat, and your soul still recovering from the emotional whiplash of public defecation. But today, there's a different energy in the air, a buzz, a vibe, something fermented, musky, and vaguely floral. That's right, it's date night, or at least the medieval equivalent of romance, where hygiene is optional and attraction is mostly determined by how many teeth you still have. Let's talk sex, smells, and medieval seduction. First of all, there's no perfume. Not the kind you know. There are herbs. Maybe a bit of lavender tucked in a shirt pocket. Maybe some rosemary rubbed into the armpits until they sting less. But the real cologne of the era? Sweat, meat grease, and a whisper of sheep. And yet, despite everything, you see couples, flirting, courting, sometimes marrying. You wonder how anyone feels romantic when everyone smells like a walking soup. Let's start with the courtship process. You see a girl near the well. She hasn't bathed in days. Her hair is braided, her apron is stained, and there's flour in her eyebrows. But her teeth are mostly there and she doesn't have visible boils. You're in love. You approach. You say something suave like, "Nice goat." She giggles, or maybe chokes. Hard to tell. She hands you a flower, or a weed. Either way, you take it. In a world without scented lotion or designer clothes, attraction is based on survival traits. Can she churn butter? Can he plow a field without passing out? Does she have access to a clean water bucket? These are the aphrodisiacs of your time. Now comes the fun part, getting close. You lean in. Big mistake. Her breath smells like fermented cabbage and onions. Yours smells like hot dog water and sin. The air between you becomes a battlefield of halitosis, but neither of you flinch. This is the game. You've trained for this. Later that evening, if things go well, you might end up in the same bed. That sounds romantic until you realize bed means a hay mattress shared by 5 people, a goat and a dog with abandonment issues. You attempt privacy. Someone coughs. Someone else rolls over. The goat watches. You keep going. You undress, slowly, because your clothes are damp and stiff like medieval armor. Every layer peels away with a sound like old parchment. You're both sweaty, not from passion, just from effort. And there's a rat watching from the rafters, chewing judgmentally on a piece of stale bread. Finally, you're down to your linen shift. She's wearing hers. There's no full nudity unless someone's really committed. You fumble, shuffle, and eventually
It's logistical. The whole thing lasts 4 minutes, tops. 3 if someone sneezes. Afterward, you lie in silence, catching your breath, hoping your rash doesn't come back. No cuddling, too sweaty. No pillow talk, there's no pillow. Instead, you both roll to opposite sides of the hay, scratch yourselves discreetly, and try to sleep, while praying your bodies didn't just exchange new kinds of lice. You think that's bad? Try being rich. Nobles had access to perfumes, sure, but they rarely bathed. Instead, they masked their stench with floral oils and powders. Their clothes were crusty, their undergarments were never changed, and yet they acted like gods among men, perfumed peacocks in velvet pants who smelled like rosewater and moldy cheese. They'd use handkerchiefs soaked in lavender to block out the smell of peasants. You once watched a duke faint because he smelled an onion. The irony? Rich people had worse dental hygiene. Sugar was a status symbol, so nobles' teeth rotted faster. Their breath, a crime against nature. And yet, romance still bloomed.
Medieval love letters were full of flowery language and dead birds, literally. Men sent tokens like feathers, ribbons, even pickled organs. Nothing says I adore you like a dried-out sparrow wrapped in twine. Weddings, that's another can of rotting worms. Bathing before the big day was suggested but not enforced. Most brides bathe once, maybe, the week before, then layered on herbs, holy water, and hope. The ceremony would be packed with family, clergy, livestock, and a constant background hum of body odor. You once attended a wedding where the priest stopped halfway through to wipe sweat from his face with the marriage certificate. Then came the feast. Everyone eats, drinks, sweats. People dance, which means bouncing in circles until someone vomits, usually into a wooden bowl, which is then discreetly placed under the table like a gift no one wants. Later that night, the couple is escorted to bed, not alone, with witnesses, because consummation must be confirmed. A priest, a midwife, or sometimes the bride's mother stands outside the door and listens for noises. There's even the occasional ceremonial inspection. You're not kidding. In some places, they'd check the sheets afterward for proof. You know what kind of proof. You shudder. You roll over in your own bed, thankful you're just a poor peasant with zero oversight. And yet, despite all this, despite the smells, the sweat, the hay in unholy places, people still fell in love. They had children, they sang terrible songs under the moonlight, and wrote bad poetry with quills dipped in beet juice. Romance survived, because humans are stubborn, because even in a world with no soap, no privacy, and no understanding of deodorant, someone still looks at someone else and says, "You smell like horse, but you're my horse." Back at home, after your soul-searching scrub at the medieval cesspool spa, you're feeling okay. Not clean, that's not a thing, but at least differently dirty. And now, it's time to address something far more treacherous than bathhouses and chamber pots: shaving. You catch your reflection in a murky bucket of water, the Middle Ages answer to a mirror. You tilt your head and take a good look at the wilderness growing on your face. Your beard isn't charming. It's not knight in shining armor material. It's more bandit in a bush meets damp moss in distress. But you can't just let it go. People may be walking bags of bacteria, but social norms are social norms. A scruffy face implies poverty, neglect, and, in some places, witchcraft. So today, you shave. You start with the tools. First, your razor, not the 5-blade titanium-coated kind. You're holding a piece of iron that's been sharpened on a rock by someone with arthritis. It's about as precise as a butter knife duct-taped to a spoon. You don't have shaving cream. The idea hasn't even been born yet. Instead, you smear a thin layer of animal fat on your cheeks, probably lard from this morning's porridge pig. It smells like sadness and bacon. You tell yourself it's moisturizing. Now you begin. The blade skates across your jawline with all the grace of a plow through gravel. Every pull feels like it's one swipe away from an impromptu tracheotomy. Blood bubbles up almost instantly. You dab at it with a rag that may or may not have been used to clean something unspeakable. The sting reminds you you're alive. You make it halfway down your cheek when you hit a bump. Ingrown hair, pimple, tiny demon sprouting from your skin. You dig the blade in to be sure. You scream, quietly, through your teeth. There's no anesthetic, no aloe. You dab the wound with vinegar and whimper. It burns so badly your soul tries to escape through your eyeballs. You feel lightheaded, possibly due to blood loss, or the psychological toll of being your own medieval surgeon. You power through, because grooming in the Middle Ages isn't about vanity, it's about not dying from infection and ridicule. Once your cheeks are shaved, you attempt the chin. Mistake. Your blade snags on something coarse, probably a hardened oat or bit of hay, and drags it down like it's pulling up roots. You reconsider everything. your hygiene, your ancestors, your life choices.
Eventually, you finish. You're bleeding from 3 places and sweating like a pig in confession, but your face is hairless. Mostly. One patch under your jaw still has some fuzz. You decide it adds character. Then comes hair care. You run your fingers through your scalp. You immediately regret it. Your hair is thick, tangled, matted, and loaded with a substance you don't recognize. It could be grease, it could be dirt, it could be the remnants of a mouse nest. You don't ask questions. There's no shampoo. There's ash. Actual ash. Some people mix it with water to create a kind of gritty paste. It's supposed to absorb oil. You smear it on your scalp like you're seasoning yourself for a medieval barbecue. It smells like yesterday's firewood and humiliation. You massage it in. You pretend it's working. You rinse it off in a half-full bucket of lukewarm disappointment. Then you reach for your conditioner. It's goose fat. No, seriously. People believed rubbing goose fat into your hair made it shiny and manageable. You scoop up a glob, sticky, cold, viscous, and smear it through your ends. It doesn't make your hair softer. It makes your hair into a weapon. If someone lights a match near your head, you might explode. Now, your hair is slick, your scalp is sore, and your dignity is officially in hiding. You grab a wooden comb, one missing half its teeth, and try to pull it through. You manage 2 strokes before it snaps. You sigh. You wrap your hair in a linen cloth and pretend it's intentional. Maybe someone will think you're a scholar, or just hiding the plague. You glance at your eyebrows. You leave them. No one had time for eyebrow maintenance, except maybe monks, and only the neurotic ones. You take a moment to breathe. The worst is over. You're groomed. By 14th century standards, you're basically a Calvin Klein model. And now, time to help your grandfather with his grooming. He's ancient, possibly immortal. His beard has its own zip code. You heat a small blade over a candle and prepare to shave him like you're carving roast meat. He growls. You growl back. It's a bonding ritual. You nick him only 3 times. Success. You finish by wiping his face with a damp rag and a prayer. He nods, silently approving, then shuffles back to the fire to stew in his own steam cloud. You look around the room. Everyone's doing something to clean themselves, or failing at it. Your sister scrubs her feet with a rock. Your cousin is pulling lice off his shirt and placing them in a collection jar for fun. Your mother is wiping her teeth with a bit of salt and dry twig. This is hygiene. This is effort. This is survival. You sit down by the hearth and poke at a pot of stew. You're exhausted. From shaving, from scraping, from not stabbing yourself fatally. Your arm itches. You scratch it without thinking and flick something hard. You bathed in slime, shaved with a prison shank, and conditioned your hair with barnyard grease. Now, let's address the one part of your body that even your nightmares try to ignore. Your clothes. You reach for your tunic, same one you've worn for months. It's brown. Was it always brown? Unclear. It might have once been green, or beige, or just cleaner. But now it's crusty in some places, soft in others, and has developed its own weather system. You shake it out. Dust puffs into the air like you just released an ancient curse. Something skitters out of the sleeve. You choose not to pursue it. If it's important, it'll come back for revenge. Here's the truth. People in the Middle Ages didn't wash their clothes often. Why? Because washing clothes was expensive. Because soap was rare. Because water was limited. But mostly because nobody wanted to die from pneumonia after putting on a wet shirt in winter. So instead of cleaning your clothes regularly, you just aired them out. You hang them in the sun. You beat them with a stick. You mutter an apology to the fleas and hope the wind takes care of the rest. But today, for some stupid reason, you've decided to attempt laundry. You carry your clothes, tunic, undertunic, socks made from regret, to the communal washing spot near the river.
It's where everyone goes to pretend they're doing something about their hygiene. You find a flat rock, slap the tunic down, and start beating it like it owes you rent. Next comes soap. You have two options: wood ash mixed with lye, a caustic chemical that eats through dirt, fabric, and your hopes. Urine. No, not as a joke. Actual urine. Fermented, aged, collected from chamber pots and saved in jugs labeled, "Do not drink again." Turns out ammonia is a powerful cleanser. So your neighbors soak their linens in old pee, stir it like soup, and rinse it in the same river where everyone bathes, dumps waste, and probably gave birth last week. Today you choose the safer option: ashes and water. You rub the mix into your tunic. It immediately stiffens like it's trying to escape its own fate. The smell is acrid, like if a fireplace had halitosis. You scrub. You rinse. You beat it on the rock again, just for emotional closure. After what feels like an hour, your shirt looks slightly less shameful, still not clean, but less dangerous to society. You wring it out. The water that falls out is the color of regret. You try not to gag.
Then comes drying. You hang it over a branch. The wind does its best, so does the sun, but nothing in this world can fully kill the embedded funk of months-old armpit grease and trench sweat. Your tunic now smells like wet campfire and old garlic. You do the same to your socks. They're less footwear and more cloth tubes of fungal despair. You scrub until the holes get bigger. Now you have toe windows. Fashion. Your under tunic? You're tempted to throw it in the fire, but linen's expensive, and you already owe your neighbor half a duck for borrowing his lye last week. So you scrub, you rinse, and you accept that it will never be white again. Medieval white is just light brown. Then there were the latrines.
Oh, the latrines. Monasteries were pioneers in the world of waste disposal. Some even had rudimentary sewage systems, where waste was funneled through stone trenches and washed away by diverted water from nearby streams. It worked until it rained. Then everything backed up like a cursed dam, and suddenly the scripture room smelled like last night's turnips. The toilets themselves were long benches with holes, set above chutes or pits. No privacy, of course. You'd sit side by side, dropping your sins into the abyss while Brother Arnold recited psalms and tried to ignore your digestive soundtrack. To wipe? Cloth rags, reused sticks, moss, or if you were truly elite, lamb's wool. Not for comfort, just because it was lying around. But despite their innovations, monks still got sick. Why? Because they also thought disease came from sin, bad thoughts, or looking at someone the wrong way. So while they bathed, they also bled themselves, burned herbs, and avoided garlic on Tuesdays just in case. Now, let's talk about laundry. Yes, monks did laundry. They had laundresses, often local women who came to wash the monks' robes in nearby rivers. They'd beat them on rocks, hang them on thorn bushes, and hope the robes didn't stiffen into medieval origami. Monks typically had 2 robes, one to wear, one to wash. If both got dirty, you just wore shame. And these robes? Not soft. Made of coarse wool, they itched like they were trying to start a fire between your thighs. You wore them day and night, sweating into the same folds where you tucked your prayer book and lunch bread. What about the kitchen? Well, monasteries cooked their own food. Soups, stews, bread. Clean hands were encouraged, but not enforced. So if Brother Elias didn't rinse after his trip to the latrine, your barley stew came with extra blessings.
They stored food in cellars, used herbs as preservatives, and believed that holy water could make spoiled meat safe again. You once ate pork that was blessed 4 times and still gave you hallucinations. Some monks tried fermenting things. Wine, beer, cheese. They were good at it. But the hygiene? Debatable. The same hands that lifted the Eucharist were often the same hands that milked the goat, with no soap in between. Then there's the infirmary. If a monk got sick, he was placed in a separate room, sometimes a separate building.
The infirmarian would bring broth, read prayers, and administer herbal remedies like mint, thyme, or licorice, boiled into a potion thick enough to varnish a fence. If things got bad, they'd bleed him, obviously. If things got worse, they'd bury him, probably in the courtyard, then say Mass and move on. But despite it all, despite the itchy robes, the shared bathtubs, and the occasional diarrhea hymn, monasteries functioned. They were some of the cleanest, calmest, most structurally organized places in a world otherwise dominated by mud, manure, and marital disputes over who farted during dinner. You leave the monastery after a day of helping in the kitchen and pretending to read Latin. Your hands are cleaner than usual. Your ears still ring from the bells. Your nose, well, it still works, and that's a miracle in itself. You walk away quietly, your sandals squishing in the mud, wondering if heaven smells like beeswax and cabbage too. You're back outside the monastery now, belly full of questionable stew and lungs full of incense, but it's not time to rest yet, because tonight your cousin's getting married, and that means you're about to witness the most chaotic collision of hygiene, religion, and body odor the Middle Ages can offer, the medieval wedding. Let's set the scene. The village square is buzzing. Someone's hung old tunics as banners. There's a dead pig roasting over a fire already being eyed by 5 dogs and 1 toddler with meat-based ambition. The bride's family is laying out what they call the feast, which consists of bread, a second type of bread, and something they swear is chicken, but might be squirrel. The bride emerges from her house. She's radiant. And by radiant, we mean she's sweating through 3 layers of linen, blinking rapidly through a mix of flower pollen and social panic, and sporting a hairstyle that required 3 aunts, 2 hours, and 1 screaming fit to achieve. Still, her tunic is mostly clean. Her hair is braided, looped, and decked with tiny herbs, and she's wearing shoes, both of them, which already puts her in the top 10% of local brides. The groom? He's drunk. But hey, that's tradition. He's also wearing his best cloak, which is just his regular cloak turned inside out to hide the stains. He's shaved, poorly, washed his hands, maybe, and reeks of onions, ale, and confidence. The village priest arrives, late, sweating, and slightly tipsy. He opens his book upside down, clears his throat, and begins to shout the vows over a background chorus of barking dogs and a lute solo from someone who's clearly winging it. There's no "do you take this woman" moment. There's no heartfelt kiss. The ceremony is more like a business contract yelled through a meat haze. The couple nods, say aye, and bam, married. Now comes the real test, the bedding ceremony. Depending on the region and decade, this tradition varies from awkward to horrifying. Tonight's version? Mildly mortifying. After the feast, where you eat something called jellied eel pie and pretend not to gag, the couple is marched to the house. Guests sing songs, dirty songs. Medieval people have no shame when it comes to innuendo. Someone starts playing the spoons. You're not sure where he got them. The bride and groom are shoved into the same bed. There are at least 10 people in the room. Family, neighbors, the priest again for some reason. Everyone's laughing. Someone throws a sock. They kiss. The crowd erupts, like it's a royal coronation. Then, finally, the door is closed. Privacy. For exactly 5 minutes. Later, someone will check the sheets. Not to be weird, but to confirm consummation. It's a legal thing. It's also creepy. But that's marriage law in the Middle Ages. Part religion, part contract, part uncomfortable spectator sport. The next morning, the couple emerges. The bride is glowing. The groom looks like he saw God and then accidentally insulted him. There's more feasting, more dancing, more random gifts, like a goat, a loaf of slightly less moldy bread, and a carved spoon with suggestive etchings. Everyone's happy. Until you remember, you're next. You, too, will one day have to plan your medieval wedding. So, let's break it down. Step 1. Pick a partner. You don't get much say. Your parents arrange it, your priest blesses it, and the local gossip has already written the sequel before you even meet the person. If you're lucky, they've bathed this month. If you're really lucky, they still have all their fingers. Step 2. The contract. Marriage is less about love and more about land, livestock, and who gets the better blanket. The dowry is negotiated like a hostage situation. You once saw a man trade his niece for 2 cows and a wheel of semi-fresh cheese. Step 3. Premarital cleansing. Bathing before your wedding? Technically optional. Spiritually encouraged. But remember, bathing is dangerous. It opens your pores, and everyone thinks cold air causes death. So you sponge yourself down, rub on some thyme oil, and pray your pheromones do the heavy lifting. Step 4. The wedding feast. This is the highlight. Everyone drinks. Everyone yells. Everyone dances until someone breaks a toe. If you're lucky, someone brings actual meat. If you're unlucky, you get pickled herring and hard cheese that tastes like regret.
Step 5. Survive the wedding night. You don't want to do this with people listening, but you will, and they'll talk about it for weeks, maybe years, possibly forever. The key is to stay quiet and not break anything important. Now let's talk hygiene specifics. Wedding clothing? Not new, just less filthy. Brides often wore their best linen, usually dyed or embroidered to hide the stains. Grooms wore belts with little pouches full of rosemary or mint to mask their body odor. It didn't work. Makeup? Sort of. Some women painted their cheeks with crushed berries. Others used lead powder. Yes, lead, because death was apparently more attractive than blemishes. Teeth cleaning? Chewing herbs, rubbing with salt, or just praying your partner had low standards. Perfume? Rare. Some brides wore pouches of crushed flowers. You once saw someone use pigeon droppings. Don't ask. And yet, weddings happened. People danced in shoes made of straw and pigskin. They toasted with horn cups and got food poisoning together. They formed alliances, families, and grudges that lasted generations. You leave the wedding that night, stomach full, ears ringing, feet sore. You're single, poor, slightly smelly, but also free. At least until your aunt tries to set you up with her neighbor's cousin's widow's niece. Again. It's the morning after the wedding. Your head is pounding. Not from alcohol. Those 4 sips of mead you managed to scavenge from the communal mug barely qualified as a beverage. No, your headache comes from the sheer volume of shouting, singing, and sustained secondhand embarrassment from last night's feast. You need a break. So you do what any overworked medieval peasant with a hangover and an identity crisis does. You go to market. Markets were the social media feeds of the Middle Ages. Loud, chaotic, occasionally hilarious, and full of misleading information. You walk into the square, already assaulted by the aroma of fish, sweat, and boiled onions. Basically the holy trinity of medieval air fresheners. Let's talk about hygiene at the marketplace. Or rather, the complete and total lack thereof. You pass a butcher's stall. There's a pig's head on a table, flies gathering for brunch. No ice, no refrigeration, just raw meat, sitting in the sun like it's auditioning for a horror film. The butcher waves at you with a blood-covered hand, then picks up a sandwich with the same fingers. Bon appetit. Next to him is the baker. His stall smells better, yeasty and warm, but his apron hasn't been washed since the last king was alive. His fingernails are black. He scratches his beard, kneads some dough, and keeps going. No gloves, no shame. Someone's selling cheese. You're not sure what animal it came from. The wheel is sweating. You poke it, it jiggles, you buy it anyway, because hunger is stronger than fear. Now you approach the fishmonger. He's yelling about eels. He pulls one out of a bucket and slaps it onto a plank. It twitches. A child screams. Another cheers. You pretend to be interested so he doesn't throw one at you. It's a real risk. Here's a secret.
Most vendors have no access to clean water. They wash their tools in rain barrels, they rinse their hands in shared buckets, and they clean their stalls with bundles of hay that just smear the filth around like medieval abstract art. You're back in bed now. The fire has burned low. The village is quiet. No shouting, no chamber pots flying through windows, no mysterious goat noises, just the soft rustle of straw and the occasional creak of wooden beams settling above you. And you've made it. You survived medieval hygiene. You washed badly. You bathed rarely. You shared combs, beds, buckets, and bodily fluids with people who thought prayer could cure syphilis. You wiped with hay. You kissed people who hadn't brushed their teeth since birth. You survived your own wedding night, outlived bloodletting, escaped the plague twice, and even dodged death by turnip at the market. And somehow here you are, breathing, resting, existing. Not because the world was clean or safe or even slightly sensible, but because humans, for all their filth and folly, refused to quit. Your ancestors were stubborn, scrappy, smelly, and impossibly resilient. They kept going. Through lice, through love, through laundry that could legally be considered a weapon. And now, you lie here in clean sheets with a toothbrush on your sink, soap in your shower, and probably 5 bottles of shampoo you forgot you had. You live in a world where you don't have to boil rosemary to feel human again. So breathe deep. Appreciate the silence. Let the ridiculous, itchy, grimy memories of medieval life fade into a strange, oddly comforting dream. And when you wake, maybe, just maybe, floss. Hey, if you enjoyed this bizarre bedtime journey through the history of human hygiene, don't forget, like the video, subscribe, and comment your current location and local time. I'd love to know who else is falling asleep while contemplating medieval butt-scratching rituals. Sleep well. Sweet dreams. Until next time.